Hey everyone, tonight we dive into the treacherous world of midnight snacking. That sacred childhood art of transforming a simple case of bedtime hunger into a covert military operation that would make Navy SEALs weep with pride. So before we begin this epic tale of stealth, string cheese, and strategic cookie procurement, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy watching me turn the most mundane childhood experiences into dramatic sagas of tactical brilliance. Let me know in the comments what your greatest midnight snacking victory was, and whether you were more of a solo operative or preferred collaborative missions with siblings. Now settle in, maybe grab a snack, ironically, and let's journey back to that magical time when your biggest military campaign involved navigating creaky floorboards and outsmarting parental surveillance systems. So, you think you were a midnight snacking mastermind as a kid? Charming, truly, like a toddler claiming they invented hide and seek. Tonight, we explore the systematic transformation of ordinary bedtime hunger into a comprehensive education in stealth operations, strategic planning, and the delicate art of eating cold pizza while crouched behind kitchen counters at 2 a.m. Before you could even dream of raiding your own refrigerator at 2 a.m., you had to survive the brutal initiation of childhood bedtime. Your parents' version of a military checkpoint, except the only passport they cared about was, has this child brushed their teeth and do they look sufficiently exhausted to stay unconscious until morning? Step 1. Present yourself for the nightly inspection. Pajamas on, teeth allegedly clean, bladder supposedly empty. Your mother, she's seen 1,000 fake yawns and isn't fooled. She checks your breath, not to compliment your minty freshness, but to make sure you actually used toothpaste instead of just running the water for 30 seconds while staring at yourself in the mirror. Suspicious energy levels, rejected. Obvious sugar rush from dinner dessert, rejected. Any indication that you might attempt a midnight bathroom expedition that somehow detours through the kitchen, also rejected. Height didn't matter, but your ability to look convincingly sleepy was crucial. If you made it past the bedtime tribunal, you were now considered ready for sleep, which in parental terms meant unlikely to immediately escape your bedroom. And yes, you had to promise things, not to the Sandman himself, but to your parents, who probably hadn't slept through the night since your birth. This promise was taken very seriously. If you broke it by emerging from your room after lights out, you weren't grounded from TV. You were sentenced to earlier bedtimes, loss of weekend privileges, or the dreaded discussion about responsibility, which sounds educational, but actually means sitting still while adults repeat the same lecture they've given 17 times before. Still planning your midnight kitchen reconnaissance? Good. Now kiss goodnight, trade your freedom for flannel, and prepare for the next 8 hours of pretending to be unconscious while your stomach begins its nightly rebellion against whatever constituted dinner. They called this rest. Children all over the world submitted to it. Some were even genuinely tired sleep, they said. Growing bodies need it, they said. Most of them actually fell asleep within minutes and dreamed of normal things like flying or forgetting their homework. But not you. You lay there, wide-eyed and calculating, because somewhere between the enforced tooth, brushing, and the mandatory kiss goodnight, your body had made an executive decision that it was, in fact, starving. Not just hungry, starving, as if dinner had been a distant memory instead of 2 hours ago. And that's where our story really begins. The moment you realized that sleep was a luxury you couldn't afford, when faced with the gnawing certainty that somewhere in your kitchen, food was waiting. Not just any food, the good food. The food your parents claimed didn't exist, but which you knew, with the certainty of youth and previous midnight expeditions, was definitely hiding in various cabinets, drawers and refrigerator compartments. You made it past bedtime. You're tucked in. Hooray. Now the real challenge begins. The systematic plotting of your midnight snack acquisition mission. Forget your daytime identity. You're no longer Tommy or Sarah, or the kid who got caught eating glue in 2nd grade. You are now a creature of stealth and hunger, a shadow with specific dietary requirements and absolutely no understanding of appropriate portion sizes. Your new identity was wrapped in whatever pajamas you could move silently in, bare feet that somehow knew exactly which floorboards would betray you, and the scent of whatever toothpaste you'd actually bothered to use. Your hair, flattened on one side from lying on your pillow while plotting. Your clothes, chosen specifically for their noise, dampening properties, because flannel doesn't creak the way polyester does when you're crawling commando style down a hallway. Everyone in Midnight Snack Acquisition dressed for stealth, moved like ninjas, and shared the same fundamental understanding that parents possessed supernatural hearing when it came to unauthorized food procurement. You want to express yourself? Try opening a bag of chips without sounding like you're operating heavy machinery. The Midnight Snack world didn't do loud. It was whisper, quiet operations or total mission failure. The first rule of midnight snacking, learned through painful trial and error by generations of hungry children, was reconnaissance. You couldn't just stumble blindly into the kitchen like some amateur. Oh no! This required planning that would make military strategists weep with pride. You had to know the layout, the obstacles, the enemy patrol patterns, and most importantly, the exact location of every potentially noisy floorboard between your bedroom and the promised land of available calories. Phase 1 of Operation Midnight Munchies involved the careful extraction of yourself from your bed without creating the kind of mattress spring symphony that would immediately alert parental units to your unauthorized movement. This was trickier than it sounds because beds, apparently, were designed by people who had never needed to leave them stealthily. Every shift in weight produced sounds that seemed amplified in the darkness. Every movement of blankets created what felt like thunderous rustling that surely must be audible 3 houses away. But you persevered, because hunger is a powerful motivator, and also because you were 8 years old and had not yet developed the adult ability to simply ignore physical discomfort and go back to sleep. Slowly, carefully, with the patience of a cat stalking a particularly stupid mouse, you maneuvered yourself from horizontal to vertical, from warm and comfortable to standing on cold floor in the darkness, oriented toward your bedroom door like a compass needle pointing toward magnetic north. Except magnetic north was apparently chocolate chip cookies. The door. Oh, the door. Every child who has ever attempted midnight snack procurement knows that bedroom doors are not merely barriers between rooms. They are complex mechanical devices designed specifically to thwart stealth operations. They squeak. They stick. They require exactly the right amount of pressure, applied at exactly the right speed to open without announcing your intentions to everyone within a 2-block radius. You approach the door handle with the reverence of a bomb disposal expert approaching an unexploded ordnance. One hand, steady and sure, grips the handle. The other hand braces against the door frame, because you've learned from previous failed missions that doors sometimes swing open faster than anticipated, creating a collision between door and wall that sounds like a small explosion at 2 a.m. Turn the handle, slowly. So slowly that paint might actually dry faster. Listen for the soft click that indicates the latch has cleared the strike plate. Pause. Listen for sounds of parental movement, television volume changes, or any other indication that your stealth capabilities have been compromised. Nothing. Good. Now begins the delicate process of actually opening the door. This is where many midnight snack missions fail. Impatience. The desire to just get it over with. But you've learned, possibly through previous failures that resulted in awkward conversations about, what exactly do you think you're doing out of bed, young lady? That patience is not just a virtue. It's the difference between success and spending the next weekend with an even earlier bedtime. The door opens 1 millimeter at a time. You peer through the gradually widening gap like a submarine periscope, breaking the surface of enemy waters. Coast clear. The hallway stretches before you, a carpet-covered minefield of potential noise hazards and unexpected obstacles that somehow weren't there during daylight hours. Every house has its own acoustic signature when it comes to stealthy movement. Your house, you've discovered through months of careful observation, has 3 floorboards that creak if you step on them wrong, a heating vent that pings randomly, but more frequently during midnight hours, and a cat who apparently never sleeps and judges your life choices with glowing eyes from whatever dark corner she's claimed as her midnight surveillance post. The hallway navigation requires a specific technique passed down through generations of midnight snackers, though never formally documented because that would leave evidence. You walk along the edges, close to the walls, because that's where floors are most solidly supported and least likely to announce your passage. You test each step before committing your full weight, because a creak now could end everything. Your parents' bedroom door looms as you pass it, a portal behind which sleep allegedly occurs, though you suspect they might actually be lying there awake, listening for exactly the kinds of sounds you're trying not to make. The door is closed, which is good, but you can hear your father's snoring, which is both good and bad. Good because it masks minor noise you might make. Bad because it could stop at any moment, leaving you exposed in the sudden silence. Past the parental checkpoint, the hallway opens into the main living area, and suddenly you're in the big leagues of midnight snack acquisition. No more carpet to muffle your footsteps. Now it's hardwood floors that seem to have been specifically designed to amplify every sound. Now it's furniture that has mysteriously rearranged itself since bedtime, creating an obstacle course of shin, bruising coffee tables and chair legs positioned at exactly the right height to catch your pinky toe. The kitchen, there it is, separated from your current position by what feels like an ocean of potential noise hazards, but is actually just 20 feet of open floor space that you've successfully navigated hundreds of times during daylight hours. But darkness changes everything. Familiar furniture becomes foreign. Shadows create threats that don't exist. And your hunger, which has been building steadily since the moment you left your bed, has now reached the point where your stomach is actively participating in the mission by producing growling sounds that seem inappropriately loud for stealth operations. The kitchen entry requires another pause for reconnaissance. You stand at the threshold like a general surveying a battlefield, because that's essentially what this is. The kitchen is enemy territory during midnight hours. It belongs to parents during the day, but at night, it becomes a neutral zone where the rules of engagement are complex and the penalties for detection are severe. First, visual sweep. What food-related evidence might betray your presence? Are there dishes in the sink that might clatter? Chairs that might scrape against the floor if bumped? The dishwasher, which seems to randomly decide to make noises even when not running? The refrigerator, which produces that mechanical humming that can either mask your activities or stop at exactly the wrong moment, leaving you exposed in sudden silence. Then, auditory assessment. Is that the house settling or footsteps upstairs? Is that the cat investigating something? Or your little brother attempting his own unauthorized midnight expedition? Is that sound coming from outside, or from somewhere inside that you haven't accounted for? The refrigerator stands before you like a monolith, humming with mechanical contentment and the promise of leftovers, milk that tastes better at midnight than during daylight hours, and whatever mysterious containers occupy the back shelves behind condiments that expired during the previous decade. But accessing the refrigerator requires careful consideration of both the opening process and the internal lighting situation. Everyone who has attempted midnight snack procurement knows that refrigerators are equipped with lights that activate when the door opens. These lights seem approximately as bright as stadium floodlights when you've been navigating in darkness for the past 10 minutes. They announce your presence to anyone who might glance toward the kitchen. They destroy your carefully cultivated night vision, and they make you feel exposed and vulnerable, like a burglar caught in a security spotlight. But you've planned for this. You approach the refrigerator with the strategy of someone who has given this considerable thought. One hand on the door handle, the other positioned to block as much light as possible when the door opens. Your body angled to shield the light from traveling toward areas where sleeping parents might notice unusual illumination coming from the kitchen direction. The refrigerator door opens with a soft whoosh of escaping cold air and mechanical clicking that sounds like gunshots in the midnight silence. The light blazes forth, destroying your night vision and making everything beyond the refrigerator's interior disappear into comparative darkness. But there it is, the promised land. Shelves of possibilities, containers of potential happiness, leftovers that somehow taste better when procured through stealth operations than when served at regular meal times. Your options spread before you like a menu at an exclusive restaurant where you're the only customer and everything is free but must be consumed quickly and quietly. There's pizza from 2 nights ago that your parents claimed was all gone, but which you can clearly see sitting on the second shelf behind the milk jug. There are sandwich components that could be assembled into something magnificent. There's a container of something that might be pudding or might be leftover mashed potatoes, but risk assessment suggests it's worth investigating. But choice paralysis is a real threat in midnight snack operations. You can't stand there with the refrigerator door open, illuminated like a Christmas tree, while debating the relative merits of various food options. Speed and decisiveness are crucial. You grab what appeals to you most immediately, which turns out to be string cheese, leftover pizza, and what you really hope is chocolate pudding, and carefully close the refrigerator door, plunging the kitchen back into darkness and yourself back into temporary blindness. Now comes the consumption phase, which requires its own set of strategic considerations. Where to eat your procured snacks without leaving evidence? The kitchen table is obvious, but also exposed. If someone gets up for their own midnight bathroom expedition, you'll be caught red-handed, or more accurately, caught chocolate, pudding-handed, sitting at the table like you're having a perfectly normal 2 a.m. dining experience. The living room couch offers better concealment, but also more opportunities for spilling something on furniture that will definitely be noticed in the morning. Your bedroom is safest from detection, but presents logistical challenges for transporting food and managing potential crumb situations that might betray your activities during tomorrow's parental room inspection. You settle on the kitchen floor, behind the island counter, which provides concealment from most angles, while keeping you close to cleanup supplies should disaster strike. This position also offers quick escape routes, should footsteps be detected approaching the kitchen. Though explaining why you're hiding behind the kitchen counter at 2 a.m. while holding string cheese would present its own challenges. The string cheese peels apart with what feels like catastrophically loud tearing sounds. Each strip seems to separate with the acoustic signature of Velcro being ripped apart, surely audible throughout the house. But you persevere, because string cheese procured through midnight stealth operations tastes approximately 17 times better than string cheese consumed during authorized daylight snacking. The pizza presents different challenges. Cold pizza eaten during daylight hours is often disappointing. Cold pizza consumed during unauthorized midnight operations is somehow transformed into ambrosia. But pizza has structural integrity issues when consumed stealthily. Cheese slides off. Toppings redistribute themselves. Small pieces break away and fall, creating evidence that will definitely be discovered during tomorrow's kitchen inspection, unless carefully managed. You eat with the focused concentration of a surgeon performing delicate operations, catching every crumb, managing every potential piece of evidence, experiencing flavors that somehow seem more intense and satisfying when consumed in darkness and secrecy. The pizza tastes like victory. The string cheese has the flavor of successful stealth operations, and the substance that you really hoped was chocolate pudding turns out to be chocolate pudding, which tastes like validation of your risk assessment capabilities. But every midnight snack operation must eventually conclude, and the conclusion requires as much careful planning as the execution. Evidence management is crucial. Crumbs must be eliminated. Wrappers must be disposed of in ways that won't betray your activities. Any containers must be returned to their exact previous positions so that tomorrow's parental food inventory won't reveal unauthorized consumption. The cleanup phase requires different skills than the procurement phase. Now you're working with traces of food on your fingers, potential chocolate residue around your mouth, and the general evidence of having consumed cheese products that might manifest as dairy breath during tomorrow morning's close contact parental interactions. You clean your hands with the stealth of someone diffusing explosives, using minimal water to avoid creating suspicious sink sounds. Drying your hands on dish towels that must be left exactly as you found them. The container that held the chocolate pudding must be rinsed, but not too thoroughly, because that would leave water spots that weren't there before. The pizza box must be rearranged so that missing slices aren't immediately obvious to casual inspection. The string cheese wrapper must be buried deep in the kitchen trash, beneath other garbage that will camouflage its presence until trash day eliminates all evidence. Mission cleanup complete. You begin the return journey to your bedroom, but now you're navigating familiar territory that has been subtly altered by your successful operation. You feel different, more accomplished. You've successfully identified a need, planned an operation, executed that operation despite multiple potential failure points, achieved your objectives, and managed all evidence of your activities. The return trip requires the same careful attention to stealth protocols as the outbound journey. But now you're operating with the confidence of someone who has already proven their capabilities. The hallway obstacles that seemed so threatening 45 minutes ago are now just familiar furniture that you navigate with practiced ease. The floorboards that could have betrayed your presence are now just minor technical challenges that you've already mastered. Your parents' bedroom door still conceals whatever sleeping or fake sleeping activities occur behind it. The snoring continues at regular intervals, suggesting that your operations have remained undetected. Your little brother's room remains silent, though you make a mental note to investigate whether he might be conducting his own midnight food procurement activities that you could potentially leverage for future operations. Back in your own room, the return to bed requires reversing the careful exit process you executed what feels like hours ago, but was probably only 20 minutes. The blankets must be rearranged to their previous configuration. Your pillow must be repositioned to support your head without creating suspicious indentations that might suggest unauthorized nighttime activities. Your body must settle back into sleep position with minimal mattress spring displacement. But sleep, which was the supposed objective of bedtime, now feels almost secondary to the satisfaction of your successful midnight snack operation. You lie there, still tasting chocolate pudding and string cheese, reviewing your mission performance and identifying areas for improvement in future operations. The floorboard near the bathroom squeaks more than you remembered. The refrigerator light is definitely brighter than necessary. The kitchen trash can lid doesn't close as quietly as optimal stealth operations require. Your stomach, which initiated this entire operation by insisting it was starving despite dinner having concluded just 2 hours earlier, now feels appropriately satisfied. Not uncomfortably full, which would create its own problems, but pleasantly content in a way that makes sleep seem like a reasonable next activity rather than an impossible requirement imposed by adults who clearly don't understand the complex relationship between nighttime hunger and childhood metabolism. You close your eyes and begin to drift toward actual sleep, but your mind continues processing the evening's events with the satisfaction of someone who has successfully completed a challenging project. You've proven that bedtime is not an absolute barrier to food access. You've demonstrated that stealth operations are within your capabilities. You've confirmed that food procured through your own initiative tastes better than food provided through normal channels. But more than that, you've discovered something important about yourself. You're capable of identifying problems, developing solutions, and executing those solutions despite obstacles and potential consequences. You can plan, you can adapt, you can succeed at complex operations that require patience, skill, and careful attention to detail. Tomorrow, you'll wake up at your normal time, brush your teeth without being reminded, and eat breakfast without any indication that you've already consumed approximately a quarter of a pizza and various other food items during unauthorized nighttime activities. Your parents will never know that their carefully constructed bedtime routine was temporarily circumvented by superior planning and execution. But you'll know, and that knowledge changes everything. The next evening's bedtime routine proceeds normally from the parental perspective. Pajamas, teeth, bathroom, bed, kisses, lights out. But now you're operating with the confidence of proven capabilities. You're not just a child being sent to bed. You're a child being sent to bed who knows that bedtime is not actually the end of the day's possibilities. You lie there, listening to the house settle into its nighttime rhythm, but now you're listening with different ears. You're cataloging sounds, timing patterns, identifying the optimal window for operations. Your parents' television viewing continues for another hour after your official bedtime. The kitchen remains officially off limits, but practically accessible to someone with appropriate skills and motivation. Your stomach, as if on cue, begins suggesting that perhaps the day's nutritional requirements haven't been completely satisfied. Maybe there are leftovers from tonight's dinner that could be investigated. Maybe there are ingredients for sandwich construction that weren't available during the previous night's operation. Maybe the freezer contains ice cream that could be consumed in small enough quantities to avoid detection, while still providing significant satisfaction. Operation Midnight Munchies Phase 2 begins to take shape in your mind. This time, you'll be even more prepared. You've learned from the previous night's experience. You know which floorboards to avoid. You know exactly how long the refrigerator door can remain open before the light becomes a security risk. You know which containers can be opened quietly and which ones require more careful manipulation. But you also know that repeated operations increase the risk of detection. Pattern recognition is something adults seem surprisingly good at, despite their apparent inability to locate their own keys or remember where they put their coffee cups. If food begins disappearing on a regular basis, investigations will be launched, questions will be asked, surveillance may be increased. This requires more sophisticated operational planning. You can't just raid the same food sources using the same methods every night. You need to vary your approach, diversify your targets, and maintain plausible deniability for any evidence that might be discovered. This is advanced midnight snacking, requiring skills that go beyond simple stealth and food procurement. You begin developing what military strategists would recognize as a comprehensive campaign plan. Different nights would target different food categories. Some operations would focus on quantity, others on quality. Some would involve pure procurement and consumption. Others would include food preparation activities that could expand your operational capabilities. The pantry, you realize, represents an entirely different category of opportunity than refrigerator-based operations. Pantry items are typically shelf-stable, which means they don't require immediate consumption or create time pressure. They also don't involve bright lights or mechanical humming that could compromise stealth. But pantry access requires different skills because items are often stored at heights that require climbing or creative reaching, and many pantry foods come in packages that create more noise when opened than simple refrigerator containers. Cookies, for example, are almost always stored in containers or packages that seem designed to announce unauthorized access. Chip bags create sounds that are approximately equivalent to operating construction equipment during midnight hours. Cereal boxes rustle. Crackers come in packages that apparently must be opened with a force typically reserved for emergency situations, creating sounds that seem certain to wake everyone within a 3-house radius. But these challenges simply require different approaches. Cookies could be procured during the day and cached in locations that allow for quiet nighttime access. Chip bags could be opened during high noise periods when other sounds would mask the operational activities, then carefully resealed for future access. Cereal could be transferred to quieter containers that don't betray nighttime consumption activities. You're beginning to think like a long-term strategic planner rather than someone who simply responds to immediate hunger impulses. This is midnight snacking as a discipline rather than midnight snacking as an occasional activity. This is food procurement as a skill set that could potentially be expanded and refined over years of practice. The sophistication of your planning is interrupted by the realization that your current midnight snack operation window is rapidly closing. Your parents' television has been turned off. Footsteps upstairs suggest that bedtime preparations are beginning for the adults in the household. Soon, the house will enter its deep sleep phase, when any sounds become more noticeable and the risks of detection increase significantly. But your operational planning has consumed most of the optimal operational window. This is an important lesson about the balance between planning and execution. Too much planning can result in missed opportunities, but insufficient planning leads to operational failures that compromise future activities. You make a command decision to proceed with a limited operation focused on quick procurement and consumption, rather than the more elaborate activities you've been contemplating. Speed over complexity, proven methods over experimental approaches, strategic caution over tactical innovation, the exit from bed, navigation through bedroom door, hallway reconnaissance, and kitchen entry proceed smoothly, drawing on the previous night's experience and the confidence that comes from proven capabilities. But now you're moving faster, with more purpose, because your operational window is constrained by changing household conditions. The refrigerator reveals new opportunities that weren't available during the previous night's operation. There's a container that might be leftover Chinese food, which could provide entirely different flavor experiences than the pizza and pudding combination from the previous evening. There are sandwich construction materials that could be quickly assembled into something more substantial than string cheese and individual food items. But there's also evidence that other people in the household may be conducting their own unauthorized food procurement activities. The pizza box has been rearranged since your previous operation, but not in ways consistent with normal parental food management. Some containers have been moved. The milk jug is in a different position. This raises important questions about operational security and competitive intelligence. Are you the only person in the household conducting midnight snack operations? Is your little brother running his own independent food procurement program? Are your parents aware of unauthorized food access, but choosing not to intervene for reasons that require further analysis? The possibility of parallel operations by other family members adds complexity to your activities, but also suggests that midnight snacking might be a more normal and acceptable activity than you previously understood. If everyone is doing it, then maybe the stealth requirements aren't as critical as you've been assuming. Maybe midnight snacking is actually a household tradition that's never been formally acknowledged, rather than a forbidden activity that requires military-level operational security. But operational security protocols suggest maintaining current stealth procedures until you have better intelligence about other people's activities. It's better to be unnecessarily careful than to be caught, because you became overconfident about detection risks. You proceed with current methods while making mental notes to investigate evidence of other operations during future reconnaissance activities. The Chinese food container turns out to contain something that's probably sweet and sour pork, which tastes even better cold at midnight than it did warm during dinner. The sandwich construction materials combine into something that transcends normal sandwich architecture, becoming a midnight masterpiece of flavors that somehow work perfectly together, despite combinations that would seem questionable during daylight hours. You're developing an appreciation for midnight food combinations that don't follow normal culinary logic. Foods that wouldn't naturally go together during regular meals somehow become perfect companions when consumed during stealth operations. Cold pizza and string cheese. Sweet and sour pork and whatever kind of crackers happen to be available. Chocolate pudding and nearly everything. Maybe taste perception changes during midnight hours. Maybe flavors become more intense when you're operating in darkness. Maybe food tastes better when it's procured through your own initiative rather than provided through normal channels. Or maybe midnight hunger creates a different relationship with food where satisfaction is more important than conventional flavor combinations. These philosophical considerations about midnight eating experiences are interrupted by sounds from upstairs that suggest bedtime routines are concluding and the house is entering its deep sleep operational environment. Time to conclude current activities and return to base. The cleanup and evidence management protocols proceed efficiently, drawing on the previous night's experience and refined through tonight's operational requirements. Food containers return to appropriate positions. Crumbs eliminated. Hand washing accomplished with minimal sound generation. All evidence of unauthorized food procurement activities successfully concealed. The return journey to your bedroom proceeds without incident, but now you're moving with the confidence of someone who has successfully completed multiple complex operations. The hallway obstacles are familiar friends rather than threatening challenges. The floorboards that could betray your presence are now just technical specifications that you've mastered through practical experience. Back in bed, you lie there processing the evening's activities and beginning to develop longer-term strategic objectives for your midnight snacking program. This isn't just about satisfying immediate hunger anymore. This is about developing capabilities, exploring possibilities, and establishing your independence in food procurement activities. You're learning important life skills through midnight snacking, planning and preparation, risk assessment and management, resource procurement and allocation, evidence management and operational security, problem solving under pressure, adaptability when conditions change unexpectedly. These are capabilities that extend beyond food procurement. These are foundational skills for independence and self-sufficiency that will serve you well in many future contexts. Midnight snacking is teaching you to identify needs, develop solutions, and execute those solutions despite obstacles and potential consequences. But it's also teaching you about the relationship between risk and reward, about the satisfaction that comes from successful completion of challenging activities, and about the confidence that develops when you prove to yourself that you're capable of more than other people might assume. Your parents think bedtime means you're settled for the night, safely contained in your bedroom until morning arrives. But you know that bedtime is just the beginning of a different phase of the day, when different possibilities become available to someone with appropriate skills and motivation. This knowledge changes everything about how you understand yourself and your capabilities. You're not just a child who does what adults tell you to do. You're a person with your own objectives and the ability to achieve those objectives through careful planning and skillful execution. The next morning proceeds normally from everyone else's perspective. You wake up at the appropriate time, brush your teeth without being reminded, eat breakfast with normal childhood enthusiasm, and give no indication that you've spent portions of the night conducting sophisticated food procurement operations. But everything has changed from your perspective. You look at the kitchen differently now, seeing not just a place where meals are prepared by adults, but a resource center where various food procurement opportunities are available to someone with appropriate access protocols. You look at bedtime routines differently, seeing them not as absolute constraints on your activities, but as the beginning of a different operational environment with different possibilities. Your relationship with food has become more complex and interesting. You're developing preferences for foods that taste particularly good when consumed during midnight operations. You're learning about flavor combinations that work specifically in stealth consumption contexts. You're understanding that the circumstances under which food is consumed can dramatically affect the eating experience. But more importantly, you're developing confidence in your ability to independently identify needs and develop solutions for meeting those needs. You're proving to yourself that you're capable of complex planning and execution, even when operating under challenging conditions with significant constraints. This confidence extends beyond midnight snacking into other areas of your life. If you can successfully plan and execute food procurement operations, what other challenges might be within your capabilities? If you can navigate stealth operations through your own house, what other complex activities might you be able to master? Midnight snacking has become a laboratory for developing independence, problem-solving skills, and self-confidence. Every successful operation proves that you're more capable than other people might assume, and that many apparent limitations are actually just challenges that can be overcome through appropriate planning and effort. The third night's operation introduces new variables that require adaptive planning. Your little brother has apparently been making unusual nighttime sounds that suggest he might be conducting his own unauthorized activities. Your parents have been talking during dinner about groceries and food inventory in ways that suggest they may have noticed changes in household food supplies. This intelligence requires careful analysis and potentially modified operational approaches. If your brother is running parallel operations, you might be able to coordinate activities for mutual benefit. But you might also be creating competitive pressure for limited food resources or increased detection risks if two people are operating in the same environment. If your parents have noticed food consumption changes, you need to determine whether this represents a threat to operational security or simply normal adult awareness of household resource management. Are they suspicious of unauthorized food access, or are they just planning grocery purchases based on observed consumption patterns? The uncertainty requires more sophisticated intelligence gathering before proceeding with standard operations. You spend additional time during evening hours observing family behavior patterns, listening for conversations that might reveal adult awareness of midnight food procurement activities. and watching for signs that your brother might be planning his own operations. The intelligence gathering reveals interesting information. Your parents are definitely aware that food is disappearing at rates that exceed normal consumption patterns. But their conversations suggest they're attributing this to normal childhood growth spurts rather than to unauthorized nighttime activities. Your brother has been exhibiting behavioral patterns that are definitely consistent with someone who is planning stealth operations, but hasn't yet developed sophisticated execution capabilities. This creates strategic opportunities that weren't available during solo operations. If your brother is interested in midnight snacking, but lacks the necessary skills and experience, you could potentially recruit him for collaborative operations that would expand your capabilities while providing him with training and mentorship in proper stealth protocols. Collaborative operations would allow for more ambitious food procurement activities. One person could serve as a lookout while the other person handles food procurement. Complex operations that require multiple people could become feasible. Resource sharing could allow for procurement of food items that are too large or numerous for solo consumption. But collaborative operations also create additional risks and complications. Communication between operatives must be managed without creating noise that could compromise security. Coordination requires planning and agreement on objectives and methods. Trust becomes crucial because one person's operational failure could compromise both people's security. The decision to recruit your brother for collaborative midnight snacking operations represents a significant escalation in operational complexity and requires careful consideration of benefits versus risks. But the potential advantages are compelling enough to justify exploratory discussions about his interest in and commitment to proper operational security protocols. The recruitment conversation takes place during normal daytime activities under circumstances that provide plausible deniability if overheard by parental units. You begin with indirect questions about his nighttime activities and his interest in food procurement opportunities, gradually escalating to more specific discussions about stealth capabilities and risk tolerance. His responses indicate genuine interest, but limited understanding of the skills and planning required for successful operations. He's been attempting solo food procurement activities with minimal success and significant detection risks that could compromise future opportunities for both of you. His enthusiasm exceeds his capabilities, which is both an asset and a liability for collaborative operations. You decide to proceed with a limited partnership focused on training and capability development, rather than immediately launching complex collaborative operations. The first joint mission will be designed primarily as a training exercise that allows him to develop basic stealth skills while minimizing risks to ongoing operational activities. The training mission proceeds with careful attention to educational objectives rather than food procurement objectives. Your brother's natural approach to stealth operations involves significantly more noise generation and significantly less patience than optimal protocols require. His understanding of evidence management is limited. His appreciation for the importance of operational security is enthusiastic, but not yet translated into practical skills. But he learns quickly and demonstrates genuine commitment to developing appropriate capabilities. By the end of the first joint operation, he successfully navigated the hallway without creating detection risk sounds. He's demonstrated basic food procurement skills. He's managed simple evidence elimination activities. Most importantly, he's shown that he understands this is serious business that requires careful attention to detail and protocol compliance. The partnership begins to develop its own operational dynamics and capabilities that exceed what either person could accomplish individually. Joint operations allow for more sophisticated food procurement activities. One person handles reconnaissance and security, while the other person focuses on food acquisition and preparation. Complex operations that require coordination between multiple activities become feasible. The expanded operational capabilities also allow for exploration of food preparation activities that weren't practical during solo operations. Simple sandwich construction becomes elaborate midnight meal preparation. Individual food items become components for creative culinary combinations that wouldn't be possible without collaborative resource procurement and preparation activities. Midnight snacking evolves from simple hunger satisfaction into something approaching midnight cooking, with careful attention to noise management and evidence elimination, but with significantly expanded creative possibilities. You discover that many foods taste dramatically better when combined in unexpected ways during midnight operations, and that food preparation itself can be as satisfying as food consumption when conducted under stealth conditions. The collaborative operations also create opportunities for sharing discoveries and techniques. Your brother develops skills in quiet container opening that exceed your own capabilities. You develop risk assessment abilities that help both operations succeed with minimal detection probability. Together, you create a food procurement and preparation capability that is significantly more sophisticated than either person could maintain individually. But the partnership also requires ongoing attention to operational security and evidence management that becomes more complex as operations become more ambitious. More food procurement creates more evidence that requires management. More complex preparation activities create more potential traces that must be eliminated. More frequent operations increase the probability of detection over time. The need for more sophisticated operational security leads to development of advanced evidence management protocols and detection risk mitigation strategies. Food procurement is distributed across different categories and sources to avoid creating obvious depletion patterns in any specific area. Preparation activities are planned to minimize cleanup requirements and evidence generation. Operational timing is varied to avoid creating predictable patterns that might be noticed by parental surveillance. These advanced protocols require ongoing training and coordination between operatives, but they also create capabilities that transform midnight snacking from opportunistic food procurement into a sophisticated operational program with strategic objectives and measurable outcomes. The evolution of your midnight snacking partnership reaches a new level of complexity when you realize that the kitchen pantry represents an entirely unexplored operational theater. While refrigerator-based operations have provided consistent success, pantry operations could potentially access food categories that offer different advantages and challenges. Pantry reconnaissance reveals significant opportunities, but also unique operational requirements. Many pantry items are stored at heights that require climbing capabilities or creative problem-solving for access. Pantry containers often have different opening mechanisms that create different sound profiles than refrigerator containers. Pantry foods frequently come in larger quantities that could support extended operations, but also create more significant evidence management challenges. The first joint pantry operation requires development of new protocols and techniques. Your brother's smaller size actually provides operational advantages for accessing items stored in lower areas, while your greater height allows access to upper shelves that would otherwise require noisy climbing activities. The partnership creates complementary capabilities that expand overall operational scope, but pantry operations also introduce you to the complex world of packaging engineering, apparently designed by people who never considered the needs of stealth operations. Cereal boxes seem to be constructed from materials that amplify sound. Cookie packages appear to be sealed using methods that require significant force and create corresponding noise. Chip bags are apparently manufactured using the same technology as emergency signal devices. These packaging challenges require innovative solutions that go beyond simple stealth techniques. Pre-operational preparation becomes crucial for managing noise-generating packaging. Some containers can be opened during high noise periods earlier in the evening, and then carefully resealed for later access. Other packages can be transferred to alternative containers that provide easier stealth access. Your brother develops particular expertise in quiet package opening, discovering techniques that minimize sound generation while maintaining package integrity for evidence management purposes. You develop skills in container modification and alternative storage systems that support stealth operations while maintaining food freshness and parental detection avoidance. The expanded operational capabilities create opportunities for more ambitious food procurement and preparation activities. Pantry access provides ingredients for complex midnight meal preparation that approaches actual cooking rather than simple food assembly. Collaborative operations allow for course midnight meals that rival regular dinnertime food experiences. But ambitious operations also create new categories of evidence that require sophisticated management techniques. Complex food preparation generates more cleanup requirements. Multi-course meals create more containers and utensils that must be cleaned and returned to appropriate positions. Extended operational time increases detection risks and requires more careful timing and coordination. The need for advanced evidence management leads to development of operational protocols that would impress professional intelligence operatives. Every aspect of operations is planned to minimize trace evidence. Food procurement is carefully calculated to avoid creating obvious depletion patterns. Preparation activities are designed to minimize cleanup requirements and evidence generation. All materials and containers are returned to exact original positions using detailed documentation of pre-operational conditions. These sophisticated protocols require significant planning time and coordination between operatives, but they also create capabilities that allow for operations of remarkable complexity and ambition. Midnight snacking becomes midnight feast preparation, with careful attention to operational security, but with creative and culinary possibilities that rival professional food service operations. The partnership's operational success creates new strategic challenges related to sustainability and expansion. Current operations are successful, but require significant time and energy that might limit long-term viability. The food procurement requirements are beginning to exceed what can be reasonably sustained through available household resources without creating detection risks. These sustainability challenges require strategic thinking about operational objectives and resource management. Are you conducting midnight snacking operations primarily for hunger satisfaction, for the intellectual challenge of complex operations, for the satisfaction of successful stealth activities, or for the creative opportunities provided by unrestricted food preparation activities? The analysis reveals that midnight snacking has evolved beyond simple hunger satisfaction into something approaching a comprehensive skill development program. You're developing capabilities in planning, risk assessment, resource management, problem solving under pressure, collaboration, and creative food preparation. These are valuable life skills that extend far beyond food procurement activities. But you're also developing understanding of more complex concepts related to resource allocation, sustainability, operational security, and strategic planning. Midnight snacking has become a laboratory for learning about independence, responsibility, and the balance between individual objectives and household resource management. The realization that midnight snacking is teaching important life skills creates new questions about operational objectives and future development. Should operations continue to focus on food, procurement, and consumption, or should they evolve into more general skill development activities that happen to involve food? Should the partnership expand to include other family members, or should it maintain current operational security protocols? These strategic questions require consideration of long-term objectives rather than just immediate operational success. What are you trying to achieve through midnight snacking activities? What skills are you developing that will be valuable in other contexts? How can operational activities be structured to maximize learning and development opportunities while maintaining appropriate respect for household resources and family relationships? The strategic analysis leads to development of more sophisticated operational objectives that go beyond simple food procurement. Operations are redesigned to emphasize skill development, creative problem solving, and collaborative capability building. Food procurement and consumption become secondary to the educational and developmental opportunities provided by complex stealth operations. This evolution transforms midnight snacking into something approaching a comprehensive training program in independence, self-sufficiency, and collaborative problem solving. Operations are planned to provide learning opportunities in different skill areas. Challenges are deliberately introduced to develop adaptive capabilities and resilience. Success is measured not just by food procurement achievements, but by skill development and capability expansion. Your brother embraces this educational approach with enthusiasm that matches his appetite for unauthorized food access. He begins proposing operational modifications designed to develop specific skills or explore particular challenges. His natural creativity combines with developing stealth capabilities to generate innovative solutions to complex operational problems. The partnership becomes a mutual education program where both operatives are simultaneously students and teachers, learning from each other while developing individual capabilities that contribute to collective operational success. This collaborative learning approach accelerates skill development while creating a supportive environment for attempting challenging activities that might be too difficult for solo operations. But the educational focus also requires more sophisticated assessment of risks and benefits. Operations that are primarily educational rather than purely food-focused might justify different approaches to resource management and household impact. Educational activities might warrant different conversations with parental units about objectives and boundaries. This possibility raises complex questions about operational transparency and family communication. Should midnight snacking activities be conducted in complete secrecy, or should there be some level of parental awareness of educational objectives and skill development activities? Would transparency increase or decrease opportunities for continued operations? The question of operational transparency becomes more pressing when evidence suggests that parental units may already be aware of midnight snacking activities, but are choosing not to intervene for reasons that require further analysis. Their conversations about food inventory and household resource management suggest awareness without apparent concern. Their behavior doesn't indicate disapproval of food procurement activities specifically. This intelligence suggests that operational security requirements might be less critical than previously assumed. Parental units might be tolerating or even quietly supporting midnight snacking activities as long as they remain within reasonable boundaries and don't create significant household resource problems or safety risks. The possibility of parental tolerance creates opportunities for operational modifications that could expand capabilities while reducing stealth requirements. Semi-authorized operations could allow for more ambitious activities with reduced evidence management requirements. Collaborative relationships with parental units could provide access to resources and capabilities that aren't available through pure stealth operations. But transitioning from covert to semi-authorized operations requires careful negotiation and clear understanding of acceptable boundaries and expectations. Parental units might have different ideas about appropriate midnight snacking activities than operational requirements suggest. Their tolerance might be conditional on factors that haven't been clearly communicated. The decision to explore parental awareness and potential authorization represents a significant strategic shift that could either expand operational capabilities or terminate current activities entirely. But the potential benefits justify careful exploration of possibilities for modified operational relationships with household authority structures. The conversation with parental units begins indirectly with discussions about food preferences, meal timing, and hunger patterns that might naturally lead to acknowledgement of nighttime food procurement activities. Your approach emphasizes educational aspects and skill development rather than focusing on unauthorized access or stealth operations. Their response reveals information that significantly changes your understanding of household food management and parental awareness of children's activities. They have been aware of midnight snacking activities from the beginning. Their apparent lack of intervention wasn't due to failed detection capabilities, but to deliberate decisions about appropriate boundaries and educational opportunities. Parental units explain that midnight snacking is considered a normal part of childhood development and learning about independence and resource management. Their primary concerns are related to safety, reasonable resource consumption, and cleanup rather than unauthorized food access specifically. Their tolerance is conditional on activities remaining within reasonable boundaries and not creating household management problems. This revelation completely transforms operational requirements and possibilities. Stealth protocols become optional rather than mandatory. Evidence management requirements are significantly reduced. Operational planning can focus on creative and educational objectives rather than detection avoidance. Resource access becomes a matter of negotiation rather than covert procurement. But semi-authorized operations also create new responsibilities and expectations. Parental units expect reasonable behavior, appropriate cleanup, and consideration for household resources. Operations must balance independence and creativity with respect for family relationships and household management requirements. The transition from covert to semi-authorized operations requires development of new protocols and operational approaches. Planning must consider parental expectations alongside operational objectives. Resource consumption must balance individual desires with household resource management. Activities must demonstrate responsibility and consideration for other family members. These new requirements are more complex in some ways than pure stealth operations, but they also create opportunities for more ambitious and creative activities. Semi-authorized operations can access resources that weren't available through covert methods. Planning can be more comprehensive and less constrained by evidence management requirements. Collaborative activities can include parental units as resources and advisors rather than obstacles to avoid. Your brother adapts to semi-authorized operations with characteristic enthusiasm, immediately beginning planning for activities that would have been impossible under pure stealth protocols. His ideas for midnight cooking projects and food exploration activities become more elaborate and creative when freed from stealth constraints. But semi-authorized operations also require more sophisticated understanding of responsibility and resource management. Freedom to access food resources comes with expectations about reasonable consumption and waste avoidance. Independence in food preparation activities comes with requirements for appropriate cleanup and safety consciousness. The educational aspects of midnight snacking become more explicit and structured under semi-authorized operations. Parental units provide guidance about food safety, preparation techniques, and resource management while maintaining respect for independence and creativity. Operations become collaborative learning experiences that involve the entire family rather than covert activities conducted in opposition to family authority. This evolution transforms midnight snacking from a childhood rebellion into a family tradition that supports learning and development while respecting household resources and relationships. Operations continue to provide opportunities for independence, creativity, and skill development, but within a framework of mutual respect and shared responsibility. The partnership with your brother continues to develop under these new operational parameters, but now with additional support and resources from parental units. Collaborative operations become more sophisticated and educational. Food preparation activities expand to include techniques and ingredients that weren't accessible through covert operations. Planning becomes more comprehensive and ambitious, but the most significant change is in the relationship between midnight snacking activities and overall personal development. Semi-authorized operations create opportunities for explicit discussion about objectives, challenges, and learning outcomes. Activities are structured to develop specific skills and capabilities rather than simply providing food access and stealth practice. Midnight snacking becomes a comprehensive program for developing independence, creativity, collaboration, and responsibility. Food procurement and preparation activities are vehicles for learning about resource management, planning, problem solving, and family relationships. The satisfaction of successful operations comes not just from food consumption, but from demonstrated competence in complex activities that require multiple skills and careful attention to various requirements. Your understanding of yourself and your capabilities continues to evolve through these experiences. Midnight snacking has proven that you're capable of complex planning and execution under challenging conditions. Semi-authorized operations demonstrate that you can balance independence with responsibility and collaboration with individual initiative. These discoveries about your own capabilities create confidence that extends into other areas of your life. If you can successfully plan and execute complex food procurement and preparation operations, what other challenges might be within your capabilities? If you can navigate the transition from covert to authorized operations while maintaining operational effectiveness, what other complex relationship and communication challenges might you be able to manage? The skills and confidence developed through midnight snacking activities become resources that support success in many other contexts. Planning and problem-solving capabilities apply to school projects and social situations. Collaboration and communication skills support family relationships and friendships. Understanding of resource management and responsibility creates foundation for future independence and adult capabilities. But perhaps most importantly, midnight snacking has taught you that apparent limitations and constraints often represent challenges that can be overcome through appropriate planning, effort, and creativity. Adult rules and restrictions aren't necessarily absolute barriers, but often represent boundaries that can be negotiated and modified through demonstration of responsibility and competence. This understanding changes your relationship with authority and restriction in many contexts. Teachers, parents, and other adults become potential collaborators and resources rather than obstacles to overcome. Rules and expectations become starting points for negotiation rather than absolute constraints on your activities and possibilities. The confidence and capabilities developed through midnight snacking create foundation for approaching many life challenges with optimism and strategic thinking rather than passive acceptance or frustrated rebellion. Problems become puzzles to solve rather than barriers to accept. Complex situations become opportunities for creative problem solving rather than reasons for giving up. Years later, when you're planning complex adult activities like career changes, relationship negotiations, financial planning, or creative projects, you'll remember the satisfaction of successful midnight snacking operations. The same skills that allowed you to procure string cheese and cold pizza through careful stealth operations will support your ability to identify opportunities, develop strategies, and execute complex plans in professional and personal contexts. The lessons learned through midnight snacking about planning, risk assessment, resource management, collaboration, and adaptive problem solving will prove valuable in countless adult situations. The confidence developed through proving to yourself that you're capable of complex independent activities will support your ability to attempt challenging opportunities and navigate difficult transitions throughout your life. But perhaps most importantly, midnight snacking will have taught you that many apparent limitations are actually just challenges that can be overcome through appropriate effort and creativity. This understanding will serve you well in contexts far removed from kitchen navigation and food procurement, creating foundation for a lifetime of successful problem solving and achievement in whatever challenges and opportunities your future provides. And sometimes, when you're facing particularly complex adult challenges, you'll remember the taste of cold pizza consumed in victorious secrecy at 2 a.m., and you'll smile with the confidence of someone who learned early that apparent impossibilities are often just problems that haven't yet been properly solved.